Welcome back. Hour number 3, Melnick in the afternoon on TSN 690. NFL season starts tonight right here in 3 hours. The Eagles, defending Super Bowl champs, hosting the Falcons, along with Mitch Gallo, Joey Alfieri, with you until 7 o'clock. Gallo's got the Owls this week at 7, leading into the NFL opener. Earlier today at the Mirage.
Way more prepared, just knowing the fact of how center position works, not only face-offs, just how you play at the NHL level is different. I've experienced that. I've had ups and downs last year, and I think I just look at those last 20 to 30 games. That's where I want to play center. That's the kind of look I want to give, and I know it can even be better than that than it was, but I thought it was a big step the last 30 games I could play center in this league and improve on that one.
The Jonathan Drouin Golf Tournament, which was attended by, naturally, his agent, Alan Walsh, and Canadiens General Manager Marc Bergevin, and Captain Max Pacioretty, and Joey Alfieri was there. Who else am I missing from
Jordy
the list?
Ben, Charles Hudon, David Schlemko, Nick Delorier were there as well.
Pierre McGuire is brought to you by Carlos and Pepe's Taqueria in Montreal, Laval, and Vaudreuil. The best way to watch sports? With friends, of course, over tacos and a cold one. Arriba, arriba, SA.
Good afternoon, Pierre. How are you?
I'm good. I would have liked to have golfed at the Mirage today.
And no Michel Bergeron, apparently. I know you asked about that yesterday. So
Bergie wasn't there?
No, he wasn't there. He wasn't there. I kept a specific eye out for him because you mentioned it, Pierre, and I didn't see him.
He's like the mayor of the Mirage.
He's probably in Florida then, if he's not around there.
I don't know. But he's fun around the golf course. He's fun all the time, but he's fun around the golf course. Anyways, that being said, that's good. That's great. That was a good soundbite, by the way.
All right. What is your...
From Jonathan.
You know, Ray Ferraro, the day that the boys had him on, I was in New York City when the trade went down, and they got Jonathan Drouin. Ray said he'll score 25 goals falling out of bed. You remember that?
I did not. I totally disagreed with that.
I know. You did not think he could play center effectively.
Correct.
So how much of a I don't think there's anybody, honestly, I don't know of anybody other than those who are maybe crossing their fingers behind their back, who are prepared to say that he is a legitimate top centerman in the NHL. But how much better do you reasonably expect him to be after a full season, struggling as he did a year ago, if he, in fact, and it's going to be this way, it appears, he's going to start at center at training camp?
It depends on the system that they choose to play. It really does. If they just try to play fire wagon hockey and they don't worry much about plus minus and they just try to go all offense because they don't have a lot of offense, that'll be interesting. If they decide to play tighter checking, more Claude Julien style hockey, I don't know the influence that the new assistant Dominic Ducharme is going to have on the team. I just don't know. I mean, maybe you guys know better than I do, but I'm looking forward to watching them in training camp and the exhibition games to see the style of play that's going to be implemented. If it's like last year, I think there'll probably be some improvement offensively. I don't see there'll be significant improvement defensively. If it's different, who knows what it could be? Who knows?
Well, actually, Jonathan Drouin did address the Dominic Ducharme influence en français.
C'est ma dernière année junior, il m'a mis au centre, fait que encore là, je le remercie un peu pour ça. Je pense que ça te donne au moins, même si ça n'aurait pas arrivé dans le national, au moins j'ai eu la chance de jouer au centre junior, puis m'améliorer à cette position-là.
Pierre, is there things you can do during the summer, like when you're away from the rink, that can prepare you better for that center ice challenge?
Oh, absolutely. That's tomorrow I'm going to Boston really early in the morning. I skate with a bunch of young players, and we work on different situations: in zone coverage, neutral zone coverage, neutral zone offense, neutral zone regroups, defensive zone breakout, just different things. We're always working on different things: attacking the net off the corner, attacking the net off the hash mark. Just different things all over the ice. You can definitely work on that. So those are things that you would hope that the Canadiens would have talked to him about in his debrief, Joey, at the end of the season, and things they wanted to see him do better. And that would probably come from Claude, and I think Claude knows enough. I mean, look at that. If you were to talk to Patrice Bergeron, I think this is really important too for the fans to understand. Patrice Bergeron would tell you he had no interest in Claude Julien being fired in Boston. None. He's a huge fan of the guys because he really helped him understand the game completely. And Patrice thrived. Patrice is going to be a Hall of Fame player when it's all said and done, and part of that is because of all the great time that he spent with Claude Julien. And I hope that the center ice in particular in Montreal has got to be better, and Jonathan's got to be better, so they got to listen to the coaches. That's a big part of it.
I think if you get on a good roll or a good feeling, it makes a good thing. Everyone's feeling all right. We're getting wins in. I think the most important part is the start of the season. You start off right, everything goes right, and you have a bad start, everything goes down. And this city is pretty similar to last year, so we don't want that, and we want to have a good exhibition and start off on the right foot.
All right, I don't know if you were able to hear all of that, but basically the importance of getting off to a good start.
That's why I alluded to it. I didn't even know that he said that. That's why I alluded to the preseason. I can't wait to watch them play because this preseason, for most teams, not all, for most teams, preseason matters for the players. It doesn't matter so much in terms of wins and losses. For this team, it's going to matter about what they're going to establish in preseason as a team. They got to be really smart in terms of the lineups that they dress. They have to be really smart in terms of the strategies that they deploy. And they have to, if they're changing their system a little bit, they're going to have to amalgamate that system really quickly in the preseason. If they don't do that, they will get off to a terrible start. If they have some consistency in preseason with the lineups, with the messaging, with the game plans, with the strategies, they'll have a chance to be better. If they don't, I think they'll have a big problem.
Now, as far as the way they're going to play, obviously, systematically, every team is going to build on and around what they have at center and with their defense, because those are the three, when on the ice, are going to have the biggest impact on what you're trying to do. Obviously, we've spoken about the center situation so much, Pierre, but defensively, the Canadiens really worry me, and I have no idea how they're going to approach things as far as the system is concerned without Shea Weber. You're looking at a defense that is going to feature Schlemko, Petrie, Alzner, Juleson, Mete, and Jordy Ben. Like, not to attack those guys individually, but as a collective, that's not a strong defense. No,
it's not an elite defense in the league. I think the system is obviously going to have to protect a lot of them. Some are obviously getting a little bit older. They can't afford any long-term injury after what happened to Shea. So you're right, Mitch Gallo. You're 100% right. And again, that doesn't mean that the defense. This is a really good story. People can go look this up if they want. In 1990, the Pittsburgh Penguins missed the playoffs on the last day of the season, and they brought in a whole new front office and a whole new coaching staff. And what they did was, and this is something that should not be a foreign concept, even though there's a salary cap today. What they did was they basically changed the entire defense, except for one player who started training camp with them, and that was Paul Stanton. Everybody else, whether it was Larry Murphy, Ulf Sanderson, Grant Jennings, everybody else that was on that defense did not start. Peter Taglianetti did not start the year in Pittsburgh in training camp. So you can be proactive and change your team. You can't change everybody, I get that, but you can be proactive and change your team, but you have to identify the players that can play in your system to make it work. And just because you name those names now, Mitch Gallo, it doesn't mean that those names are going to be the guys that start the season. But I would agree with you. That is not an elite defense. I would agree.
That's for sure. And Jonathan,
let's be blunt. It's below average on the surface.
Right.
Doesn't mean they can't play better, but they're a below average NHL defense as they exist right now without Shea Weber.
We agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Drouin also made reference to Colorado as a team that wasn't very good 2 years ago. Last year made the playoffs and put up a pretty good fight against Nashville. I like that Drouin is looking at situations that he finds similar to what Montreal went through last year. I'm just wondering, Pierre, if you look at that situation, how was Colorado able to turn things around, and can Montreal look at that as an example?
Well, one guy was almost had an MVP season, Nathan McKinnon. I mean, he completely and utterly took his game to a whole other level. That was a huge part of it. Their defense, especially the way they transitioned the puck out of their own zone towards the offense, really helped them a ton. They were able to play with a lot of speed. They utilize their home ice advantage because of the altitude. Varlamov was very good for most of the year. I think that was a big part of it. So that Montreal's got to hope Carey can have a big bounce back like Varlamov did. So there's a lot There's a lot that happened there that was positive. But I think one of the most important things that happened there, quite frankly, was Nathan McKinnon had an MVP-type season. Somebody from the forward group of Montreal is going to have to do the very same thing, I think.
Well, there is no comparable.
Well,
I mean, Jonathan Drouin can play a lot better, and he's got dynamic offensive skills, and he should be one of the better power play guys in the league. But I don't think anybody's going to.
Well, I know, but I'm not arguing. I'm just telling you that if you ask me how they're going to be like Colorado, that's how it's got to be. But that's why I brought up the one player's name. They don't have that player. They don't have that guy.
So let me go back to the blue line for a second here, because you've alluded to the system, and that I think that was a big part of what they were attempting to do, as wrong-headed as it might have been. Is you get a solid stay-at-home defenseman in Karl Alzner, even though the league was becoming quicker. In Claude Julien's system, he should have been a lot better than he was. I got so tired of hearing about the transition from man-to-man to zone and zone to man-to-man and all that. I mean, we're still hearing about it almost a year later. Enough of that. He's an NHL defenseman. He's a veteran. He's a great guy. He's a character guy. But based on what we saw, how does he improve to the point where he is noticeably better in a league that is getting younger and faster?
I think one of the things, and I don't know because I haven't spoken with Karl, but I think one of the things that should have been addressed in the debrief is, and does not mean he's out of shape, but one of the things that should have been said was you need to come in lighter. You can still be strong and you can still be big, but you need to come in lighter. If you talk to most of the guys that do the conditioning work around the league, that's one of their big goals for players is to come in leaner and lighter so you can be quicker. That's one of the things that should have been emphasized to him. Another thing I think will be his role. Exactly what is expected of him. You weren't brought here to score points. I can share this conversation with you. I remember when Ryan Suter went from Nashville to Minnesota, and I was doing a Minnesota-St. Louis game, and Ryan Suter was playing terribly at the beginning of his career in Minnesota after being so good in Nashville. And I asked him, I said, what do you think the biggest problem is? And he says, I'm trying to live up to the dollar value of my contract. So I'm trying to do things that are completely out of character for me. And I wouldn't be surprised if Karl Alzner had a lot of that happen to him last year. And I think that's one of the things that the coaching staff and management maybe don't worry about what you're making. Worry about the way you're playing and play to your strengths. Don't try to do things you're not capable of doing. And I think if that gets through subtly and in a positive way, that can help Karl a lot, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the added pressure of a new city and living up to the contract. There's certainly early on in the season, as they were stumbling, a lot of us were shaking our heads going, what is he doing behind the other team's net? How often we saw that? He never went there when he was with Washington.
No, well, and I'm glad you brought that up. And that's why, again, I watch all their games, and I just, for the life of me, don't know why he was not on a shorter leash. And that wasn't addressed by management and the coaching staff. But again, potentially, because of what's gone on here with the changes in the off season with some of the coaches, the message will maybe be a little fresher. It'll be a little bit more fun. It'll be maybe a little bit more slick in a positive way. One thing I would tell you, I'm really excited about the young men that are going to play in Laval. And I know the fans don't want to hear this, but this is a real part of this thing for this team. I think you've got a really, really good young coach in Joel Bouchard. I had a chance to spend some time with him this summer. I watched him work and interact with some of the young players with the Armada and Blainville-Boisbriand. I was really, really impressed by the way he messaged and the way he carried himself. And I think that's going to really pay long-term dividends for the organization.
Okay, I'm glad you went there because the rookie camp opened today. Dan Robertson was there, and we're gonna hear from Dan and some of the players and Joel Bouchard in just a bit. But in terms of the younger players, like Noel Juulsen, I think everybody would agree that Noel Juulsen has a legitimate NHL future ahead of him. The question is, what can we see or expect from him, especially the first half of the season if he makes the team without Shea Weber? How much of a window, how much of an opportunity that he will seize here?
Oh, I think he's got a chance. I've been telling you for a few years I thought he was their best prospect. One of the two top prospects that they had at the time. No, he's going to be a very good player. He was a very good draft. He's got to be cultivated properly. I think they did that a little bit last year. But I think he's ready to take the next step. Usually that first summer after your first pro year, that's because you learn how hard it is. That's a major development summer. So if he went home and did the right things and the Canadiens messaged with him properly at his debrief, he should be ready to have a very solid second year. I believe, anyways. I think he should be very, very competent.
And the other young player that the expectation is, well, he got that out of his system. He was exposed to the NHL as a teenager, and he didn't look bad. He can skate with anybody in the National Hockey League. But sometimes the second time around is harder. Some guys will take a step forward. Other guys will take a step back before they take that next step forward. Again, what is your reasonable expectation for Victor Mete?
I just want to see the size factor and how he holds up. I worry about that a little bit. That's why I wasn't a big fan of them rushing him last year. He definitely proved that he could play in NHL games, no question. But the ultimate mark for a consistent NHL player is to be able to do that on a night-in, night-out basis and not to have your minutes massaged because you can't handle certain matchups or certain in-game situations. So that will be the thing that I'll be watching for him is that improvement that you're alluding to, Mitch. I don't expect, because I've heard so many good things about him as a person, I don't expect character issues will be a problem. So I think the work habits were probably pretty darn good, and that should lead to real positive things for him this season.
Stylistically,
somebody's calling Pierre for a scouting report.
They can just listen to the show. Stylistically, though, Pierre, you look at those two young defensemen. Which one do you think is a better fit, maybe, to play alongside Alzner longer term this season?
Well, Juleson, if you look back to some of the better games that Karl ever played, he and John Carlson were so darn good together for a long period of time. Really, really good. And he never really got his just due in Washington because Carlson always had the points. But I'm not saying Juleson's ever going to be John Carlson because they're a little bit different, but there's some similarities there too. I would say that I could see that being more of a fit. And you guys probably, I haven't talked to Victor Mete. I think he probably is more comfortable playing on the left side than the right. But I don't know that for sure. But if you were to ask him, I'd say that he'd probably be more comfortable playing the left than the right.
So, Pierre, Mitch asked you about a couple of young defensemen. I'm wondering about a couple of young forwards, and starting to get to the point where they're not young anymore. And, of course, we could all agree that you have to hit on your first-round picks if you want to be successful in the NHL. I'm looking at the 2013 and 2014 drafts for the Canadiens, first-round picks, McCarron and Scherbak. Those two guys, it feels like maybe less for Scherbak, but we're at a crossroads.
Yeah, I think less for Scherbak. I still think there's some upside there. Mitch Melnick could tell you this. I was not really, and this is not a knock on the Ontario Hockey League and the London Knights in particular. When he was committed to go to school, and he had a chance to go play for Andy Murray at Western Michigan, that's what that player needed. He didn't need games. He needed to get strong for a bigger person. He needed to get quicker for a bigger man. He needed to learn the game from a different standpoint, and that's what you get in college. Now, not one size fits all. Some kids need to play major junior. Other kids need a different developmental thing. Mitch, remember when I said I don't think this is going to help his development? I really don't. And London Knights develop a ton of really good players, a ton of them. I just didn't think that player should have been there at that time. He should have been playing for Andy Murray, an NHL coach at Western Michigan. And I'll stand by that because it's improved, well, at least so far anyways, he hasn't been developed properly.
This is it. This camp is it. For Michael McCarron and the Montreal Canadiens. That's it. And
as a Montreal Canadian, you know what? He's lucky. He's lucky in a way because in the old days, if you remember, when the team was really deep, and no offense to Joey and to Mitch Gallo, the Canadiens gave their top picks 2 and maybe 3 years max. And if they didn't see any opportunity, you were traded. They moved you. You know, the list is long and frequent of players who were Canadiens draft picks who they didn't think, especially when they were really deep, they didn't think they were going to pan out. They just moved them. And there was no hard feelings. This is a business. We're moving on.
Very few players
and that's
jumped.
what they did.
Yeah, very, very few players in the 70s, the glory years, jumped right into the league. And, geez,
No,
even Steve
exactly.
Shutt had to wait. He played like 50 games his first year.
Hey, Larry Robinson, Doug Jarvis, Doug Riseborough, Murray Wilson, Bill Nyrup, the late Bill Nyrup. Go look at the list. Brian Engblom, of guys that ended up playing for the Canadiens, but they spent a lot of time at the Midtown Tavern in Halifax, I'll tell you that.
All right, final one. It was the Jonathan Drouin golf tournament, but Max Pacioretty was there, confirming the report from yesterday in Le Journal de Montréal by Marc Defoy that he will not negotiate with any team once the season starts.
As I learned last year, it is very difficult to play to the best of your abilities when you have this much of a distraction. And I do understand that there will be a distraction regardless this season, but I want to try and make that as minimal as possible. And I think it's unfair for me and my teammates if I'm standing up here every day talking about my contract situation.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, and I respect him tremendously for it. He cares. I don't think it's ever been documented enough, and I hope that some of the writers that cover the team on a day-to-day basis, why don't they ask him, what does it mean to you to be the captain of the Montreal Canadiens? I've spoken with him about it. I think you'd be blown away by how passionate he is and how respectful he is of not only the organization, but of that position in particular. And he knows, now he's gone through it a few years, how much the hot lights are on him and how much he would rather talk about the team than talk about himself. And I think if you were to ask Carbonneau, and I have so much respect for Guy, if you were to ask him what it was like to be the captain of the Canadiens, he would probably tell you the same thing. It's better to talk about the team than it is to talk about myself.
Pierre McGuire, are you still at home in Tremblant, or what's your story?
No, I'm at Sally's place right now.
Oh, you're in the downtown core.
I'm in downtown. We're taking my mom, Melanie and I are taking my mom out for dinner, and then early departure. I got to get to a rink in Boston early tomorrow.
Look forward to talking to you tomorrow from Massachusetts.
Thanks a lot, Mitch. I appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.